Okay, folks, greetings and welcome back to the Perspectives Pod. Today's date is the 16th of March, and this is our sixth episode. I'm joined by Joseph and Simone. Guys, say hello.
Hello.
Yo,
And so we're gonna discuss a few things of interest today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Democratic Party and some issues that they're having. We're going to talk about bureaucracy, and we're going to talk about some couple of crimes that are kind of disturbing, recent crimes that have occurred. One of them up here in the Northeast. I don't remember where the other one occurred, but anyway, we'll get to that. So let's go ahead and start off with Joe. Joe, what talk to us about what's on your mind today?
well, it is, of course, as I'm sure people have gotten to figure it out, political, but it's more structural than just current events. It's really the accumulation of the Democratic Party, specifically the official party, not the beliefs held, not the voting base, but the leadership within the party, especially within federal government and Congress. It's the accumulation of their strategies of the past, really since the Clinton era, and how essentially strategies that were fantastic in the 90s aren't holding up today. And the really kicking point for this discussion was recently, uh, yesterday, I believe, no, 2 days before, there was the federal shutdown looming. The vote was on the 14th. And as soon as the day before, the Democratic perspective in both the House and Senate was we cannot vote for this bill. We understand the danger of a shutdown, but this bill is harmful. We will not go
Right.
for this bill.
Mhm.
And 10 p.m. the evening before the day of the vote, Chuck Schumer, who is the minority leader for the Democrats, he came out and said, "This bill is bad, but it is better than a shutdown, and I will be voting for this bill."
Right.
And in
Oh,
actuality, that's not what happened. The following day, he and eight other Democrats and one independent who caucuses with the Democrats, that's Angus King,
right.
they
From
voted
Maine.
cloture. And for those who aren't aware, cloture, Cloture, it essentially means an end of discussion or debate. In practice, that is a vote to bypass all debate and filibustering opportunities for the bill and go straight to a vote. And it
Right.
requires a 60 vote majority. And once that vote was carried out, then the actual bill passed to avert the shutdown 54 to 46. So there
Okay.
were several Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, who voted to end discussion but didn't vote for the bill. And
Right. Right. And so, what does that have to do with today's strategy of where you
well,
feel today's strategy for the Democratic Party is?
it's twofold. The first
Mhm.
perspective is many, and I truly mean many, many people who will be directly impacted by this bill, voters, federal workers, those in the social safety net, they
Right.
didn't want this bill. They understood what a shutdown means. The, their jobs are
And what is it
furloughed.
that they didn't want? What is it about the bill that they didn't want?
The bill gives the executive branch significant power in controlling the funding and availability to operate of several agencies. And
Okay.
it also it is a beyond that, beyond the practicality of it allows the executive branch to continue to overreach beyond their power. It's no, it was not debated on by the Democratic Party. It holds nothing for the Democratic Party. Uh, I'm sorry, I'm butchering my words here. It holds nothing of value for Democratic voters. There is no
Okay.
compromise. There is no debate on it. It cuts Medicaid. It cuts. It does not cut Social Security, as far as I know, but it also cuts. I want to say several thousand workers in the FAA, though that could be another
Yeah.
bill that was discussed.
Because he's wanting to cut, and he's wanting to cut. The reason so that he can provide the massive tax cut that
Yes,
he's promised to corporations and his billionaire cronies.
yes,
That's essentially to help pay for that.
yeah. And the counter argument to that was promoted by Chuck Schumer in the end and his supporters was, this is a bad bill, but if the government shuts down, Trump can do whatever he wants while it's shut down. He can just fire effectively all these federal workers by just saying you're
Hmm.
furloughed now. He can
Okay. Well,
send Elon Musk.
you would think that, okay, so if he can in fact fire all these federal workers, it will if it will give Trump carte blanche to do what the hell he wants. You would think that all the other Democrats would be aware of that, and that would encourage them to vote in favor of it instead of giving him that ability to do what the hell he wants. Right? Am I wrong?
Well, it was a no-win situation essentially. Like the end result was going to be much the same, except that by not voting for the bill, the blame is solely on the Republicans. They had the majority. They put the bill together. They're the
Sure.
only ones who made that happen. By voting for this bill, it's supporting this. It is allowing this to happen. It is enabling it. Everyone who voted in support of this bill becomes an accomplice of what's happening because
Right.
Trump wins either way. And
Yeah, and I have to agree. I mean, it seems that voting, it puts the Democrats between a rock and a hard place. If you vote for it, you do just as you've said, you give Trump carte blanche to do essentially what he wants, to fire people and et cetera. Whereas if you don't vote for it, I think you're looking recalcitrant. You're looking, you stand the chance as a party of looking like you're not willing to play ball.
you are.
Um,
But in this case, the I can't say it's a consensus, but
yeah,
a lot of very loud voices have been saying we want that recalcitrance. We want the opposition. This is wrong.
right,
They are strong arming us into taking a
right,
bad bill. And
right,
we understand we're going to hurt, but we know who's hurting us. It's not the
right,
opposition party, it's the administration.
right.
And this
Mm,
was really a matter of the direction the Democratic Party wanted to take in their opposition to the Trump administration. Do
mhm,
we fight against it? Do we act against it? Do we show our voters and supporters and those who don't support either side because they don't know who to support? We are
mhm,
trying to do whatever we can to not support this administration. Or do we
right.
go along with it in the name of propriety and in the name of smooth operations, even though the
Sure,
result is still the same? And
sure.
that's where it gets me because the way that Chuck Schumer acted, he clearly understood this was going to be an unpopular move. He didn't
Yeah.
even have the guts to vote for the bill himself, though he said he would. He just said,
Mhm,
let's let the bill happen and then we'll wash our hands of it. And then he went on to his book tour. And I say it derisively like that because to me, it is just an example of how out of touch the establishment Democratic congressional leadership is with the actual shifted desires of a very large wing in the Democratic Party. A large
yeah.
wing, it's essentially the progressive movement. And by progressive movement, I mean anyone who's not either a neoliberal or a centrist or a
Mhm,
flat liberal. It's
sure.
a wing that's grown. It's not 2016 where Bernie Sanders was an unknown name. It's not he's not even the
Right.
biggest name anymore. There's a lot of people who have a lot
Yeah.
of supporters, and in our big tent party, any large faction can influence future elections. They can influence the way the party's going. If they're ignored, they're going to continue to strain the unity of the party and possibly
Right.
break out against it. I have
I think
seen.
I think what's happening, and I mean, I agree. Um, the Democratic Party needs to be more aggressive. You've got the old, what do you want to call it? Traditional Democrats, for lack of a better phrase,
Mhm.
uh, like Schumer and like a lot of the older and more established Democrats in the House and in the Senate
It
who've
almost
been there
seems like
for decades.
they see the lens through the 90s of the Clinton
Yeah.
administration where
Yes.
pro macroeconomics, pro business, walking the
Yes.
center line, that's the
Yes.
way to go.
That's
And
exactly right.
It's not it's not that
This
you
is a
have to be
different era.
anti-business. You just can't
Yeah,
follow the same playbook. James
right.
Carville was an astute political mind back in the 90s, but he does not seem
Hmm.
like he's changed much since. And so he's out of
Yeah,
touch now. Even though he's
yeah.
still just as intelligent, he's operating
Oh,
by the
sure.
same perspective. And he's
I mean,
just
you know,
4th minute.
these other, I mean, like Carville, Schumer. Listen, see, these seasoned politicians who've been in D.C. for decades, they have a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience, and they should certainly be um, shown the respect they deserve and listened to because they have a lot of wisdom to share. But we're in a different era. We
And
are
if
in a
they're not
completely
paying
different era.
attention, and it's not an age thing, it's not even an ideology thing. I think that Nancy Pelosi and Charles Schumer, Chuck Schumer, they're cut from the same cloth in many ways. Nancy Pelosi is intelligent enough to go with the time. She understands how to work in a changing era. She
Yeah,
managed to she still manages to hold an inordinate amount of power despite stepping down from leadership. And I guarantee you that she's going to be a significant influence against Chuck Schumer now, because if she has spoken publicly against him, and as we
and where does
know,
she stand?
she has spoken against, not, I don't know if she said against, she's spoken against him directly, but she's criticized the Senate Democrats for their inaction
Okay,
publicly. And if she's
okay,
criticized it publicly, you know she's done much more behind closed doors. That's just how
hmm,
she operates. The only time she'll say anything public is if anything private hasn't worked. And
right.
that's establishment Nancy Pelosi, that's far left, Sanders, AOC, and company, prominent Democratic donors who have chosen to remain private, but they voiced their concerns anonymously. This is
Yeah,
verified from reports from The Guardian, from Reuters, and Politico, that
right.
privately major Democratic donors have expressed absolute not just frustration, fury at Chuck Schumer for his
Yeah,
inaction. He's getting
yeah.
attacked by almost every other faction in the Democratic Party. He and
Well,
his perspective of
I,
enabling the administration.
when you consider what's at stake, you know, this
I
old
don't think they're
saying.
thinking towards midterms. I think that Chuck Schumer is thinking, how can I act to mitigate? But he's not considering,
uh,
what if I don't act to support this bill? Does that still do anything?
right,
Because
right.
we're fighting to get people to keep people interested for midterms and interested for
Yeah,
2028. We need to get
yeah,
people who didn't vote to vote, and I can think of no better way to suppress non-voters than to show them we're the Democratic Party. We're not really
yeah,
opposing Trump at all. We're
right.
just holding little signs up in his State of the Union and
And
wearing.
shaking our canes. Yeah,
I can respect the shaking of the cane at least because he stood up and said something. He interrupted the thing. The people just sitting
that's great.
down, holding a sign up.
Think of the optics. You know,
Yeah,
not only that example, but the example of Maxine Waters, Chuck Schumer, and I forget who else standing at a podium outside of the Capitol. This was about 2 weeks ago, and chanting something. I forget what they were chanting, but I'm like, there's the old guard, literally and figuratively, the old guard of the Democratic Party. And I actually sat there and I thought to myself, they look frickin' old. How
it,
is this going to appeal to your generation? You know, the two of you and everyone else like you. We want you guys as part of the Democratic Party. We need you because our values are, in my opinion, the progressive values of the Democratic Party are what will take us in deeply into the 21st century instead of the values of the current Republican Party, which will take us back 60 years,
but
70
I say
years.
this much. I don't know if they're the progressive values of the Democratic Party. And I say that because
They are not.
progressives are not beholden to the Democratic Party. They are
Right,
beholden to their beliefs.
right.
And there's a lot of talk of third parties, real talk, not just I'm going to join the Green Party, but I'm going to start a local movement in my community to build a third party that can win
Yeah, but you
elections.
know what? You know what, though? Just as we've spoken about this before, if you're going to build a viable third party, it has to be organic from the ground up, not
That's
from
what
the
they're
top
talking
down.
about. That's what they're talking
And
about.
that is
Local
going to take
community.
that. It's no. Now is not a good time for that
It's not a
because
good time, I know, but that's
at
what
all.
they're talking about. That we've reached a
Well,
crisis point, I think, where pe- a lot of young people are just fed up. Like there have been many chances for the Democratic Party to turn away from their inaction, essentially, to
Right.
appeal more to their progressive base, and they've again and again not done it. And I think a lot of progressives are just starting to say, "Okay, I don't care about your
Yeah.
strategy. I'm doing what's going to work for us." And
Well, you know what though?
it's
I hear
short-sighted,
you, but
perhaps, but it's gonna
it is.
have to appeal to them a lot because otherwise they're going to get lost.
Yeah. I mean, listen, all that's going to happen is it's going to fracture the Democratic Party, and it's going to
Yeah,
give Trump and the Republicans 2 more years after 2026, and God knows it could even help them get the White House again in 2028.
it could,
My God, do we
but that's
really
what the
fucking want
Democratic
that? You can
that
kiss democracy goodbye at that point.
that's what the Democratic Party has to really contend with. They
Yeah,
have to change or they will die because
that's right.
you can't just ignore one of the largest branches of your party, minority branches it may be. If all the progressives leave and start their own third party, sure, they
Right,
may only win locally. And sure, Trump will probably win. Well, a Trump will win an election in 2028. Who the hell
right.
knows? But the Democrats will lose. So the
This
Democrats
requires
simply have to
discipline.
decide, do we want
Yeah,
to win elections or do
right,
we want to not give a single inch? Because that's the thing. A lot of progressives
hmm,
want the world, but a lot of them can be convinced to accept the lawn, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
They
yeah,
want single payer health care. We want really. I consider myself one. I just am operating from sort of a neutral perspective as much as I can, but single payer
right.
health care, universal basic income, all these wonderful
Hmm,
social safety nets.
yeah,
Frankly, efforts towards single payer health care and not giving tax breaks to millionaires, that would be enough, I think. If that was
yeah,
real, if that was a real policy supported, announced, and enacted upon in office
right,
once the
right.
Democrats gain a majority. But they have to do that because if they don't, look, I hear what you're saying, Dad, but they're not the progressives out on the streets right now aren't thinking strategy. They're thinking they're not representing me, so fuck them. I'm doing my own thing.
Uh,
For
right, right,
as good
right.
or bad as that will be for the
It's
country, it's just human
that's
emotion. If people betray you
well,
enough,
and you can't you can't be emotional when it comes to politics.
you
You've got
can't
to think
be. I
strategically.
agree, you can't be. But if this election taught us anything, when it comes to winning an election in the current state of American politics, policy doesn't mean a damn thing. It's all image, it's
Mm,
all rhetoric, it's all getting
yeah,
people to like you and want to vote for you.
yeah,
That doesn't mean you shouldn't have policy. You should have 100-page long documents showing
yeah,
exactly where you stand to show that you actually do know what you're talking about. But when it comes to winning, Trump
right,
knew how to play to the hearts of a lot of American people, dumb as they may be, and he won. And that's the ball game. It's just winning.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I
No,
see I see the current crop of possible Democratic candidates, and I see a few that seem like they understand that, and a few that I just well, to give
yeah,
one example, I see Tim Walz talking about how we need to actually fight, say something. We need if we don't have any political power, we need to get out of the federal government and on the streets and
hmm,
start raising our
hmm.
voices. And then I see Gavin Newsom talking to Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk in his new
Why do
podcast.
you think? I didn't really look too deeply into that. I mean, I have to suspect that Newsom's reason for talking to them was, more to. I think he was thinking long term. I think he was.
I'm not sure what he was thinking. I actually listened to the Charlie Kirk one the whole way
You
through,
did,
and Newsom was very milk toast in talking to Charlie Kirk. He didn't really fight many of his policies. He just kind of discussed them. He agreed with a couple of them. It was very civil, very mild mannered,
okay,
except for the fact that Charlie Kirk is a bona fide racist and he is a neo Nazi. He has not denied any of this in any real sense. He's openly
right,
talked about how, look, if I see a pilot and they're a black pilot, I don't think this plane's going to fly that well. He's that kind of guy. And that,
wow,
whatever strategy Newsom might be having, if this is his approach, I have not watched the Steve Bannon one yet. I will because I want to be absolutely sure. But if that's what he thinks is a winning strategy, I don't want him
right,
running. I will
okay,
vote for whoever wins the primary in the 2028 election, but I'll spend every waking moment to make sure that guy never wins the primary if he's going
yeah,
to take that strategy. We're not going to
right.
win by whitewashing Nazis.
Oh, well, I don't disagree with you there. But
I understand the strategy. I just think he's gone way too far in it.
yeah,
That's unacceptable.
yeah. Well, we have to wait and see what else he does. I mean,
It's a
I'm not
long
going to trash
time.
the guy just because of two interviews. I want to
I
wait
won't
and see
trash
what
him
else
as a
he
credible
does.
candidate. It's just what a way to start your campaign. This
Well,
is
I mean, and has he even
I'll
started his campaign? Has he declared that he's running for president? I don't
I mean,
think so.
not officially, but this is starting his campaign. Tim Walz
Yeah,
started his campaign too. It's the kind of thing that
yeah.
is not talked about openly. But when a politician starts rejecting continued terms of governorship, like Gretchen Whitmer did, and
Right.
when they start leaking book tours and sudden new pushes into media, they're prepping for an actual campaign.
Yeah. I just want to mention something, and then we have to switch over to Simone. But
Yes.
um, there's an old saying: a certain politician who we both love and miss. I
Mhm.
remember one of the many, many wise things he would say was, "You got to get along to get along."
Yes.
And in the old, in the previous iteration, well, prior to Trump, yeah, I could see that. You got to get along to get along. But we're at a point in our history. You want to talk inflection point? We're at an inflection point. With Trump, it's not about getting along to get along. You got to give a little to get a little
Yeah.
because this guy,
He's not giving. That's the thing.
he's not giving. He's not giving.
Politics is
You're
the
right.
art of compromise, and he's not compromising.
No, he's not compromising. So, it really begs the question. So, how do we approach this?
Yeah.
If you fight a bully, you got to punch him in the mouth. You got to punch him in the mouth once, twice, however many times, but you got to
And if he's
knock him
got
on
your
his
arms
ass.
held down and you can't punch him, you at least shout in his face. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
if you can't actually oppose, do something. And that's why I liked what Al Green did and why I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
like what the others did, just sitting in their chairs.
I,
I
res-
like
I respect the fact. I respect the fact that he got up and that he said something. I wish more of them would have done that. I didn't
it.
watch the speech, by the way, because I didn't feel like sitting there for almost 2 hours listening to him drone on and
I'm a
complain like a
masochist, so I
baby.
watched it. But when I saw it
I
happen, I
couldn't.
thought, is this, are they, okay, so he's getting taken out. Is another one going to stand up now and then interrupt him again? I was thinking that I was hopeful and thinking, are they going to
Yeah,
just do this for all 50 members sitting in there and just
right,
stop the speech? But they didn't do it. They
right.
just sat there with their fucking signs.
Well, listen, I think I would like to see AOC. She's smart. I know a lot of people are really suspicious of her, and a lot of people don't like her. I think
Hmm.
she's a really intelligent, hardworking politician. She's got the really grassroots, traditional democratic values of years ago
Yeah.
before we became more of a
Yes.
corporately influenced party.
Hmm.
And people like her, people of her generation, there are a few others. There's one, Auchincloss is his last name. I forget. He's from the Northeast somewhere. There's
Yeah.
another guy, I can't think of his name, but he's around 40 years of age. There are some young, up and coming Democrats in Congress who are very impressive, really smart, and more progressive, and they want to fight. And that's what we
And
need
they're
to do. We
willing to
have to
fight
fight.
within the system. They're willing to work within
Yeah,
the Democratic Party, and that's important. And I hope the establishment sees that because right now, AOC, Sanders, Jasmine Crockett, all of these, they're
yeah,
Democrats working within.
yeah,
Well, Bernie Sanders is an independent, but he knows how to play the game.
yeah,
And the
sure.
establishment needs to give them enough to so then their constituents see that it's working within. Otherwise, their constituents are not going to work within anymore. They
Yeah,
the
yeah,
establishment's got to compromise just a little bit. Otherwise, there's
right.
not going to be any victory.
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting. All right.
Yes.
Okay, Joe. That was good. Very interesting. We could talk a lot more about that, but we'll
Oh,
have to
I
save
could,
it for
but I don't
next.
want to hog the gap. And I'm really interested in what you have to talk about, Simone, especially that first one you discussed.
Yeah. All right, Simone.
Yeah,
It's yours.
some unfortunate news broke in specifically the Northeast Connecticut area this past week, earlier this week, in Waterbury, Connecticut. A small fire broke out in this home. It was a self-started fire, and when emergency units arrived at this house, one, they put out the fire, but two, they found a very malnourished individual, 32-year-old male, who was 5'9" and 63 pounds. He was locked in this room with the locks from the outside, and comes to find out that he has been held captive by his stepmother for the past 20 years. Um, and his stepmother is currently on bail for $300,000. But some points of this case are it started when he was 11 years old. He stated that he remembers starting to be malnourished from 11 years old. His water and food intake was limited. He was forced into this 8 foot by 9 foot room for about 22 hours of the day, only let out to do household chores, forced to urinate into a water bottle, um, barely able to eat. They actually did a house call. CPS, Child Protective Services, did a house call back in 2005, before he was completely held captive and not even allowed to go to school. He was going to school, and someone from the school, I believe, called CPS and had them go to his home because they noticed that he wasn't really eating well, didn't bring any lunch to school or something like that. And I don't know, Child Protective Services didn't really find anything, and they let it go. And eventually he was taken out of school. I don't know what the parents' excuse was to get him out of school. But yeah, for the next 20 years, he was just held captive in this room, food restriction, and held in this room with no heat or AC, and
So
barely let out.
let me
And
ask you a
when they
question.
found him, he also hadn't bathed for like 1 or 2 years, they said.
Jesus. So let me ask you a question. Where's his father?
I don't know. There's no information about the father. I mean, some reports are saying that the father was on like a wheelchair and he was disabled. Like everything in the news is mostly about the stepmother, who is like just a well functioning individual, no health issues. And her and her attorney are saying that she denies all claims. All these claims are false, and she's
Uh,
out on a $300,000 bail.
$300,000 bail. So she had to come up with, I think, 10% of that, which is 30 grand. Um,
Mhm.
Talk about a wicked stepmother. I mean, granted, we don't have all the facts, and that's something people need to
Yeah,
remember. Every time we hear about, terrible criminal cases, we hear what the media gives us, and we don't have all the facts. We don't have all the information.
it just
People
happened
are
earlier this week, so it's
mhm.
still very new.
Yeah,
But I mean,
yeah.
how he's 32 years old, 5'10" and 63 pounds. I
Yeah,
Someone
that's no
did
good.
that to him. Perhaps it
Yeah.
wasn't her. I mean, we don't know for sure, but somebody did that.
And they also said part of his teeth were missing, and it
Yeah.
seemed like they were decaying, and
Oh, no
God
doubt.
knows what else.
If he
So,
didn't bathe for 2 years, just imagine. I mean, this is horrible. This is a
mhm.
terrible thing. I mean, okay, look at the bright side. He's only 32. There is plenty of time for him to recuperate. I'm trying to be positive because this
Yeah,
is a terrible story. But thank goodness they found him. He's still alive. He can recuperate. He can, with help, lots of help, he
hmm
can, become fully functional again and hopefully, become independent eventually,
I
acquire an
wonder,
education.
does the state like help provide him like the help he needs? Do they give him financial restitution? I mean,
Well,
considering like
they'll,
child protective services were sent there at one point and they failed him, like,
yeah,
I would assume it's probably through a suit he might have to file or someone on his behalf, but
yeah, they've got to do something. The state of Connecticut has to step up, especially with this being in the media. They're
Hmm.
going to step up. No politician, no civil servant is going to want to have
especially
negative.
Connecticut. I mean, you're right, Dad, any state, but Connecticut has such a good reputation as a state where we're safe, and this is a huge action against that. So, for his sake, I think that's a good sign that he might get
Yeah,
more immediate help.
yeah.
I hope
And
so.
I wonder how he started the fire himself. Like, he was smart enough to start a fire to get
Okay.
the attention and help in the home. I wonder how that all went down. I'm sure is going to make a whole
Oh,
documentary
you
about this
know
at
it.
some point because they always
I
do.
Yeah,
mean, if he was in a wall that wasn't solid metal, have we all seen the Shawshank Redemption?
I haven't. No.
Very good movie, but over 20 years, a little gem cutting pick was used by one of the characters in ways that I won't mention. But if you're dedicated enough, you can get through a wall, get to wiring, and just start pulling wires until something sparks, and just
Wow. Well, Yeah, he figured something out. Maybe while he was downstairs doing his chores that he was
Yeah.
forced to do, maybe he snatched some matches and some paper. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he had curtains in his room. I wonder if he had furniture. Was he sleeping on the floor?
I don't know.
I mean,
Not
this is
sure.
just unbelievable. And not still the idea of not bathing for 2 years. I get bothered if I don't take a bath after a day. So 2 freaking years.
I don't even
I
know
Imagine.
mean,
how their
he
attorneys
was
expect to
essentially
get him
in
out of
solitary. He was essentially in solitary confinement because that's how it
Yeah.
is. You are in one room for 20 plus hours of the day. You get, if you're lucky, an hour out in some sort of area, which it sounds like he was just out in the house itself. So he was in solitary confinement for 20 years, and that'll do
And
things to your mind.
and
there.
go
Yeah.
ahead, Simone. You're going to say something?
I was just going to say, I don't know how her attorneys expect to get her out of this with all of this proof and all. Like, I saw this picture with, like, I don't know, two or three like deadbolts on the outside of his door. It's like this was his
Okay.
bedroom and the locks are
Good.
from the outside. I don't know how you expect to get out of this. These
Well,
accusations.
exactly. That's a very good point. See, if the locks are on the outside, then that means he was being held against his will. He
Mm-hmm.
was being locked in that room with no way of getting out on his own. He was dependent on someone letting him out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty good evidence against her.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, our criminal justice system, our judicial system, allows people. Number one, you're innocent until proven guilty. Everyone deserves to have representation,
Yeah.
and so she is entitled to have zealous representation.
And she's
And
not, of course, she has the money to afford private lawyers, but even if you're a death row inmate who was on national TV committing a murder, you're still going to
yeah,
get a public attorney. You're still going to get someone who, even if all they're arguing is fair treatment, fair sentencing, you're still going to be treated fairly within the law as long as that attorney can help it. Because even in the situation of someone committing a crime, you could be
yeah,
overcharged. And the idea
right,
is not so much to fight for innocence, but fight for your client's rights, such as the
right.
rights to not be given cruel and unusual punishment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. I really look forward to finding out the outcome of this case, and I mean, I wish nothing but the best for that guy, and I just can't imagine. But yeah, you mentioned earlier, Joe, when we were talking about this before we started recording, uh, the name of was it Fritz or you named
Yeah. Josef Fritzl,
right?
Joacf Fritzl, Fritzl. I believe he was
Yes,
Australian, and he was someone who I think kept several family members locked in his basement for years on
yeah,
end.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. The
some
name
years.
rings a bell.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure if we look it up online, we'll find out about it. That does ring a bell, though. He, from what I recall, was a pretty creepy guy, especially regarding how he treated one of his children. So
Yes.
it was very, just very disgusting. But you
Speaking
wonder
of
why.
children,
What, sweetie?
speaking of children, there's
Yeah.
another lady, a blast from the past, who's making a resurface.
Oh, yes.
Excuse me. Oh gosh, what's her name?
Casey Anthony.
Casey Anthony. Casey Anthony's trying to make a comeback in society again on
Outrageous.
social media. This past week, she's tried to make a TikTok account and post about advocacy. Advocacy, I think, for her daughter, for children, and everyone shut her down. Everyone has immediately just canceled her, shut her down. I don't know why she's even come out of.
Now,
She
Simone,
was in the
for
witness
those
protection program. She was in some kind of protection program where they gave her a new identity, sent her to a new country. She was supposed to have a new life, and she's like, "No, I'm going to try and come back. I'm not done with America. I'm not done with my life. I'm going to try and make a comeback." I don't know
Interesting.
what makes her think that would ever be feasible, especially
yeah,
in social media this day and age where we're canceling people for
Right.
any which reason. You,
Mm,
in my opinion, killed your daughter.
yeah.
So
Well,
well,
and
on that note,
considering
Simone, for those of us who aren't too refreshed with the details, and what exactly did she do or was alleged to do, or
she
what's
was
the
a
alleged?
like a party girl in the early 2000s. She was in her early 20s, had a daughter, a beautiful daughter, and she was partying too much. And I think she accidentally possibly killed her child. I don't know if it was purpose or accident. I think she definitely did it. And I think she just wasn't ready to be a mother and she covered it up. She didn't report her daughter missing until a month after she was gone.
Mm.
And they never really figured out who the killer was. So they kind of let her go because they didn't have too much evidence on it, I guess. But I mean, I think all signs point to her or the father also, her father, the
Right.
child's grandfather. There's some involvement there, I think, but it's all
Right.
so unclear. Uh,
Yeah.
so,
I'm looking here. I went ahead and pulled it up before we started recording the Wikipedia, just FYI. The death of Kaylee Anthony, which is Casey Anthony's daughter. She was only, this little girl was just under 3 years of age.
mm,
Okay. Orlando, Florida is where this took place. Um, she was reported missing in a 911 call made by her grandmother, Cindy Anthony, who said she'd not been seen for 31 days. 31 days, guys. According to what Cindy told police dispatchers, Casey had given various explanations as to her daughter's whereabouts before eventually saying she'd not seen her daughter for weeks. How do you do that? Okay, okay. As a parent, I, no, no. I'm sorry, but that would just. How do you do that? Talk about irresponsible. Now that does not implicate her in being the killer of the child, but it doesn't look good for her. And this is just the little bit that I just read. It goes on to say that Casey, the mother, later called police and falsely told a dispatcher that Kaylee had been kidnapped by a nanny
named
on June
Zanny.
9th. Pardon?
Named Zanny. It always kills me.
Okay.
The nanny
I'm
named
sorry.
Zanny. It's
Really?
Nanny
like,
name's Annie, right?
I was like, okay, is
Yeah.
Xanax? Are you giving your child Xanax to knock her out so that you can go to the party, the club? Like that's what everyone thinks. It was like,
I
there's
don't
no
know.
nanny because no one ever. Is there really a nanny named Zanny? Like I feel like
I,
it was fake. Like a lot of things in the media were like, this person never even existed.
right.
Mm.
So it goes on to say here, the child's on December 11th. All right. So this happened. She was reported missing on July 15th of 2008. On December 11th of 2008, her skeletal remains were found with a blanket inside a laundry bag in a wooded area near the Anthony family residence. Okay. She had duct tape. She'd been duct taped near the front of the skull or on the mouth of the skull. And the medical examiner listed cause of death as homicide by undetermined means. So, wow. And now, I mean, okay. So she wants a second chance at life in the United States. But I mean, that's a tall order. Um, I just I don't know. I'd need to do a little more research. I can't remember if she was found guilty. I do remember her spending time in jail, but I
Hmm.
don't remember ultimately if she was indeed found guilty. No, she probably wasn't
No,
because
because they let her out and gave her another identity.
wow,
I don't really
wow,
remember what all happened, but yeah,
I'm
she
just
didn't
yeah,
really get the
thinking.
justice she deserved. A lot of people think.
I'm just
yeah.
thinking social media is a very big factor in this, beyond the fact she's trying to get on social media. But in what other realm of recent existence is there the possibility of genuinely believing that you could redeem yourself in the eyes of people who think you're a murderer by just promoting yourself enough? You know, social media has become this place where people think they can just be who they want with no repercussions, and
Right,
somewhere somehow you'll find a community of people who support you. And I don't know if they're wrong in that sense. The greater
yeah,
community is definitely jumping down Casey Anthony's throat, but
yeah.
contrarianism is a strong factor, and she might well find people who just want to support her.
Oh,
Well,
I'm
she
sure. And
does. Last time I checked, which was probably like 3 or 4 days ago, she did have about 23,000 followers or something. I'll check it again now. And
it's amazing that she has that many, considering what she's accused to have done. What, oh my goodness. And I just don't know. I'm blown away, obviously. Um, but
I'm
you
just
know
thinking
what?
back to OJ.
Say again?
I'm thinking back to OJ. How many people thought he did it and yet still ate up everything he said and followed all
Yeah,
the news, bought his book. I understand the fascination, but support is
yeah.
still support, even if you say, "Oh, I don't support what he did at all, but I bought
Well,
his
it's the thing
books."
about it's that thing about watching a train wreck.
Yeah,
You can't help but watch the train wreck. You know what's going to happen, but you got to look. It's similar to that. I go back. I take it back to leadership. Leadership in a culture in a community. We've got a president who was convicted on 34 counts, felony counts. He was still elected. He was still elected by a majority of voters. So when we live in that sort of atmosphere, when we live in an atmosphere where what's the name of the guy, the Infowars
Alex Jones.
guy, Alex Jones, you've got somebody like Alex Jones who had millions of followers and made a hell of a lot of money off of his bullshit. When you've got Donald Trump in the White House doing all the crazy crap that he's trying to do to tear this country apart, well, sure. Now's a great time to have somebody like Casey Anthony come on back, and I mean, what better time is there than now to try and launch a social media career? Why not? So, it's par for the course.
I don't know if it's really explicitly, I mean, it's an exacerbating factor. Trump, Jones, all of them have multiplied this significantly, but you know, I don't like the idea of saying that's not my problem. I think that's an important philosophy in any social society, but
Right,
I think there's some merit to the concept of looking at something, saying that's none of my business, and then going about your day. Not
right.
with matters that hurt other people, but being able to look at something and say, would my life be improved if I spent the next 5 hours delving into this and just like getting into shouting matches with people online about this one way or another? And if
Yeah,
the answer is no, then consider if you really want to do that. And I think
right.
if a lot of people did that, that 23,000 follower number would be a lot lower.
It's up to 77,000 now. I just.
Okay, so
77.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I don't know. I
That's
just think that the side effect of the internet becoming the new town square is
yeah,
you can't really get away from it. And in
yeah,
actual town square, if the party's too loud, you go back home and sit in your nice area away from it. But
yeah.
you can't get away from it. So I think it's just so
No,
much
you can't.
harder to ignore
You
it.
can. You can't. Right. It is. It is. Social media is as addictive as other addictive substances, caffeine, cigarettes, alcohol.
And very
If you're not,
prevalent.
yes, yes. Um, al- Social media must be regulated. It needs to be regulated. The internet needs to be regulated as if it were a utility
Yeah.
like electricity. It is that important. It is just as important. So, but we're not going to get those sort of regulations under the current administration.
Yeah.
You can forget that. And by the way, when I said earlier, I blame it on leadership. I'm not blaming Casey Anthony's current situation on Donald Trump,
Sure.
but he is a contributing factor
Definitely.
to this current atmosphere of oh my God,
It's what he represents, that
what he
consequences
represents.
don't necessarily have to matter.
Right, right. Listen, as I've said to you guys before, character is destiny. Ethics matter. When I was in college, oh, a number of years ago, I took an ethics course. I guess because I was a business major, I had to take a business ethics course. And, I really, really enjoyed it and I got a lot out of it. Um, but ethics, what you do matters. Character is destiny, and what I mean by that is the decisions you make in life will, based on your character, if you have an upstanding moral ethical character, and I don't mean being a stick in the mud and being a prude, but what I'm saying is as long as you try always to do the right thing toward other people, your decisions that you'll make in life will determine your outcome.
Yeah.
And so,
And don't be afraid of failure. I don't mean be an asshole and then try and get better. I just mean if you have a bad day, if you snap at someone, if you do the wrong thing, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. Just don't do
Right.
it again. Learn from your mistake. We all
Yeah,
make mistakes. It's just what
totally.
matters is how we learn from them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. It's really interesting. Mistakes in life, in your job. Their opportunities. That's how the Japanese looked at. If I remember correctly, back in the '80s, the Japanese were our big rivals economically,
Yes.
and all these prognosticators, these authors would write books on what the Japanese are doing right and what we should be learning from them. One thing I recall is they looked at mistakes as opportunities, you
Hmm.
know, to learn from instead of being upset about making mistakes. Okay, we made this mistake. How can we learn from it and not uh, repeat the mistake?
Yeah. A
Let's
common
learn
refrain
from it.
was, "I'm sorry. I will do better."
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So there's no shame in making mistakes as long as you intended not to make the mistake. You were
Hmm.
doing your best. You made a mistake. Great. Learn from that. You know. But anyway, Simone, do you have anything more to add to this?
Nope, that's
It's
it.
going to be interesting to see how her pursuit, how Casey Anthony's pursuit of a social media career develops. Um, I don't wish her ill. I don't wish her ill.
I don't wish her great.
Well, I don't. Assuming, oh, geez, what a I'd love to know. I'd love to find out what happened to that poor little girl of hers. Who killed that child? How did that child die? Same thing with the other one. The one, oh my gosh, different case totally. What was her name? Beautiful little
Haley.
who?
Haley Anthony?
No, 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 no. A different child.
Oh, John Bonet Ramsey.
Jean Benet. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jean Benet
I don't think
Ramsey.
we're
I
ever going to
would
find out
love
the
to know
answer to
what
that
happened there.
either.
What happened to those
I
kids?
have no idea.
Fascinating cases.
I think
Um,
honestly, it would be best for everyone if someone she trusted talked to her and said, "No, this isn't. No,
Oh,
go.
for Casey to not
Yeah,
do
for
social
Casey
media.
Anthony. Yeah.
just
Well, she
this is
made two
appropriate."
posts, 2 days apart, I think, and the last one was on March 6th, and she hasn't posted again since, and she's turned off all the comments on her videos. So maybe she got the message. Who
Well,
knows?
you know what? I
Hope so.
bet the reason she turned off the comments is because a lot of people were trashing her,
Well, yeah,
giving her a hard
obviously,
time.
no one was on her side. Like,
Yeah.
literally no one.
I
So,
mean, if I were her and I were given a new identity and sent to a foreign country, I'd keep my head down and my mouth shut and just enjoy my new life.
try to
Yeah,
rebuild. Yeah.
learn from her mistakes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, all right. Let's see how we're doing on time. Yeah, we're running
Actually,
a
very
little
good.
long.
We're a lot better than what we normally do.
Yeah. So, okay. What I decided to talk about is not so much about anything political, I guess.
That's
So, shock.
shocking.
Yeah, isn't it? Um, and I'm looking at my notes that I took. The importance of a federal bureaucracy.
You're a
Okay.
liar.
Well, in his defense, that's civics. I'm splitting hairs here, but
Hmm.
I'll tell
Yeah.
you what. I will say right here, the next first topic I pick next week, it won't be any way shaped about politics. It's a challenge to me because I'm gonna have to think about it.
I'd like
Well,
to see
there's
that.
so many things we can talk about. It doesn't have to only be political. However, because we love our country and because we're so concerned about the direction it's going and the
And
leadership in DC,
this is kind of who we are.
you know. But anyway, so bureaucracy. The reason I decided to talk about this was because of a podcast that I was listening to recently. Um, and the person being interviewed was talking about the importance of a federal bureaucracy. Michael Lewis, an author, he wrote Moneyball, which they made a movie out of. Hollywood made a movie out of. Fast Boys, I think, was another book he wrote, which Joe, you would really you would really find interesting. I read that book, and it had to do with this. I forget the term of this type of trading on Wall Street but it's got to do with the internet trades being made online and the immediacy of the
Yeah.
trades. And this book was written several years ago, so of course the technology has changed. But anyway, he wrote this. His most recent book has to do with civil servants and the heroics that these unnamed civil servants who go about their jobs on a daily basis, the important roles that these people perform for us. And it's not just federal civil servants, which is, of course, what his book is about. You look at civil servants on the local level, the state level, the federal level, they perform very important jobs. Put this into perspective. Our country has grown considerably over the past 100 years. I mean, if we go back just to, let's say, 1965, 67, the population at that time, let's see what it was, 197 million. It was around 197 million people. And now we've got around 330 million people. So we've nearly doubled, you know, almost two-thirds. I guess we've increased our population by about two-thirds. That's huge. How does anyone expect, which baffles me if you think about this? We've got 330 million people in the United States. How are we supposed to have a smaller bureaucracy with 330 million people? Okay. Now, what'll surprise you is the size of the bureaucracy. It hasn't really increased that much. Okay. But first off, why do we need a bureaucracy? Let's start with some of the reasons why. So, civil servants handle a lot of the really essential tasks on a local, state, and federal level, issuing permits. Permits like, let's say you need to build an extension on your house, requires a permit, right? You got to apply for that permit. There's got to be an inspection. There's probably a fee for that permit. That's one example. You could have, exams, certain exams that you need to take for certain kinds of jobs that people have. Those exams are given either at the local, state, or federal level. Okay. Civil servants administer those exams. What about collecting various fees? And I don't just mean taxes, the fees for the extension on the house that you're building. Okay. So they perform a multitude of jobs that are really critical to our society. They also emphasize and support various rules and procedures for the way things are done in our government, as well as helping people, making sure that people are being treated fairly, equitably. Okay. So, I mean, there. I look forward to reading the book. I don't know that it's come out yet. I have to check, but I certainly would like to read the book by Michael Lewis, his latest book. Um, but it's just really incredible. Civil servants. I mean, they provide. This is the thing that really got me thinking. Career civil servants, people who've been working for. I mean, Joe, your mom works for the federal public defender's office. She's a civil servant
Hmm.
at the federal level. She's been doing this job for over 20 years. She's an expert at what she does.
Over 20, almost 30, and I can tell you it's a lot of inglorious work, very monotonous,
Right.
very nose to the grindstone, but
It's,
you can
it's
see the
so important.
results. You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have specialized knowledge, these career civil servants. And if
she's
you,
actually she's actually in the process right now, since she's close to retirement. She's organizing all of her institutional knowledge, all of her information into like a manual for her replacement eventually. We don't know who her replacement will be, but they're going to be coming in not having 30 years of experience of how who to contact, who to speak to, how to speak to someone, how to file things a certain way so they succeed. All of that's important to learn knowledge that your civil servants have to be in the position long enough to get and then
that is,
passed down. It's almost
that is
an inheritance of
absolutely,
sorts.
you're right. That is so important. And it's great that she's doing that because imagine had she not decided to compile all that information into manuals, she would just say, okay, I'm done. You
Yeah.
guys can have it. Adios. She leaves. her replacement starts from scratch. I
Yeah.
know what that's like, and it
Yeah. It's
sucks.
very
And I'm a
chaotic.
civil servant. So, but yeah, so all the expertise that they've acquired over the years in their specializations, in their careers, working for a local, state, or federal government, that should be respected and appreciated. And I don't think people are really aware because we've got this idea of the bureaucrat as this lazy, time wasting person who's just collecting a paycheck, you
Yeah.
know, and they don't really give a shit. And
Yeah.
it's not true. The vast majority of civil servants are conscientious, hardworking people who take pride in their jobs. And they may vote when they go out to vote, they may vote for a certain party, but they are non-political. Most of them are
And I
non-political
think
in
it
their
really
jobs.
is a case of ignorance in the absence of knowledge, because I don't think people realize how strict the federal government and local governments are, all government, about not being political, about not taking
Right.
gifts. If you get a
Oh,
$30 gift card, you have
yeah.
to report that and you might not be able to accept it. If you wear
It's
a
exact.
lapel pin, that might be
Yeah.
too much. Even an American flag lapel pin might sometimes be suspect, if only because you want to be as unassuming and neutral as possible, because you don't want anyone to feel like you're against them.
You're
And
absolutely right.
functions of government too. I saw people discussing the other day. I am not kidding.
Yeah.
Someone was saying, "Oh, we spend too much money on libraries that's going to things people don't need. We should defund them." And there was an argument, and some guy popped in who was supporting the defunding of libraries, saying, "Well, look, why don't we just take all the taxes that people are paying to libraries and buy the books directly and give it to people who can't use the books?"
Oh,
And
for
to
fuck's sake.
that, someone said, "Congratulations, you discovered libraries." And it's just, people aren't
Right.
thinking about what
Not at
government
all.
actually is. Government's your damn road, it's the libraries,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
all these wonderful services you don't even think about because
Well,
that's
that's
just
right.
there.
That's right. And the continuity. So, your mom, that's an example of the continuity that career civil servants provide across so many different aspects of a bureaucracy. And so because she's creating this manual, she's
Yeah.
establishing continuity so the next person that comes along can continue to do the job seamlessly. There's a
Yeah.
nice transition.
And it
And
builds on itself. Perhaps
it
there's
does.
mistakes my mom has made that her successor will learn from and then edit and
Exactly.
continue on. And
Exactly.
these
That
massive manuals on how to operate entire departments, that
yeah,
department had to be created at some point, and there were mistakes in its creation they learned from. It's
right.
as they say, all OSHA
You know,
regulations are written in blood. All manuals are written in errors.
sure, sure. It makes me think of what I do when I first got to my law firm. I'm a software trainer. That's what I do. And when I first got to this law firm, and I've been working for law firms in New York City since 1997, but I got here and there were very few scripts that were written. One of the things you need when you teach software, you need a script that you follow so that you know what steps that you can
Mhm.
follow along in a proper, um, uh, coherent, logical order. You have to follow the script so that you can teach the software to the trainees.
Yeah,
And there were very few scripts. The scripts that were written in such a way that the people who used to give the classes, who used to teach the classes, understood what they meant. But for me, I'm like, I don't know what this is telling me. So I had to write a lot of the scripts that I'm now using. I had
yeah.
to create a number of the tip sheets, and I'm revising some guides. I'm not complaining. Listen, it's keeping me busy, and I'm
Yeah.
learning so much more about the software as I go along. But that's an example of how continuity is
And I'm
very
sure you're
important.
writing it in such a way where it's not going to be, well, I understand it. It's going to be
No.
understandable. Yeah.
Oh, listen. That's one thing. No, 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 no,
It's the
no. It's
cornerstone of
got to
technical
be
documentation. You have to make sure
correct.
your audience understands it.
Exactly, exactly. Let me give you some statistics though about the federal government and civil servants. All right, so think about this. In 1933, the beginning of Franklin Roosevelt's presidency, there were about 500,000 federal employees. In 1933, at the end of World War II in 1945, There were 3.5 million. Okay.
Mhm.
Why? Having to deal with the Great Depression and all the different programs that were established to help pull us out of the Depression. And then we fell right into World War II, 1941, December 7th. And so we had to gear up our federal government even more to establish a war machine. So 500,000 to 3.5 million, that's a huge increase within 12 years. Anyway, think about this now. Let's fast forward 20 years, 45 to 65. Lyndon Johnson is president. The number of civil servants, bureaucrats, if you will, federal civil servants, was 2.2 million. Okay. So it went down at the end of 1945 from 3.5, 20 years later, 2.2. That's a loss of 1.3 million. Okay. But we had more people in our country, 197 million people in the United States at that point. Okay. And then our federal budget had increased at that point, 1965, according to my notes, and I've got links we can put in the show notes for all this information. Our federal budget at that time was 332 million. Okay, so that's 60 years ago. We're in 2025 now. 60 years ago, 1965, federal budget of 332 million. Okay, as of 2018, right? That's just 7 years ago. Federal workforce comprised only 0.6%, or in other words, 1,980,000 people of the total US population. Okay. It was in 1967. Think about this. In 1967, 1.1% of the total population. So if we had a population of 197 million roughly, 1.1% of that was, according to my math, 2.167 million. So 2,167,000 people working in the federal government. We've got less people today working in the federal government than we did back then. Okay. So what's this bullshit about trying to slash jobs and become more efficient? It's crap. It's crap. All right. We need
And
to
if you're
have a
motivated,
what?
if you're motivated by money, the federal workforce takes a drop in the bucket compared to the federal
Yeah,
government spending. If you want to cut spending in the government, you don't go for the people working for it. You go for the
exactly.
many
You know,
other
you
things
make a
it's
great
got.
point. That's a really good point. And that's a point actually that Michael Lewis made in the interview I saw with him recently. He mentioned just that. He said, look, these people, especially the career civil servants, they could leave after 10 years, after 20 years. Let's say you start, you're 30 years old, you leave at 40. I'm sorry. Yeah, you leave at 40, 10 years later. 20 years later, you leave at 50. You still got a lot left to give. You could join the private sector and double or triple your salary.
Yeah.
Why do these people enjoy work? I really believe the vast majority of them have this pride in serving their country and doing something valuable that they know will affect the greater population.
There was
So,
actually there was a she was a park ranger. Their PBS NewsHour did a special, a short little excerpt on her, and I wrote a piece on my blog just expressing my thoughts about it because it was so simple in how it was presented. She became a park ranger because she wanted to help her community, not necessarily the whole world or the whole country. She just saw where she lived and she thought, yeah, people like to use the forests here. They want to go on these trails and they just want to engage, and I want to help them do that. That was her motive for becoming a park ranger. She was very intelligent, very young, and she could have done many different things. She wanted to
yeah.
be a park ranger, and that was her
Uh-huh.
motive. That was it. She certainly wasn't paid that great, and it was a
Right.
seasonal job that she had to find other ways to support herself when she wasn't working there. But she was purely motivated by helping her community, which a lot of government workers want to do. They see where they
Yeah.
live and they think, how can I help? And they choose government work as a way to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a wonderful thing. Um, you know, just a couple of things I'm gonna leave you with about this. So again, the absolute number of federal workers in 2018 was slightly less than it was 50 years ago. So remember, what was it, 2,167,000 by 1967, and then as of 2018, 1,980,000. So it had dropped, even though our population multiplied considerably. And also keep this in mind, and it really, to me, it really brings it home. Without governments, I'm sorry, without government, without bureaucracy, without the federal uh, establishment that we have, all the different departments, local, state, and federal, what kind of a place would we be living in if we didn't have local governments, federal governments, state governments, all the different departments that support roads, bridges, the water you drink, whether it's out of a faucet or bottled water, it doesn't matter, to ensure that water is drinkable and,
There's
and
actually
healthy
a
and
really
really poison you.
there's a really
It,
good way to see what kind of place we'd live in. Go watch
mhm,
your average Western movie made in the mid-century, and don't put yourself in the shoes of the protagonist. Put yourself in the shoes of the poor people, the extras who get shot in the crossfire or who are just milling about their day. That's the kind of world we'd live in, our average person.
that's interesting.
Rattlesnakes roaming
Yeah,
around, water you can't trust, criminals just walking
right.
in, and maybe there's someone with a gun to stop them, but no, there's no law, there's no order except what you make for yourself. That's the world we live in without government.
That's a good point. That makes me think of a lot of libertarians who want minimal government. I think that's a really good point. When you think about how life was out west
Yeah,
150 years ago, in the 150 years ago would have been like 1875. Think
yeah.
about what the old west was. You know,
It was what you
you could
made it.
pretty
It
much do
was,
what you wanted.
and that sounds appealing. I could do what I want, but what you want and what other people want, when those collide, that's where you get the harsh truth of the libertarian ideal, which is you're not always going to be the protagonist.
Yeah,
And you're lucky if you get some semblance of law and order, but even that's beholden to
right.
someone who may not think according to how you do. There's
And
actually a
look at
prison. Hmm?
look at life expectancy. Life
Yeah,
expectancy 150 years ago, what, maybe 50 years of age you were expected to live.
something
Now
like
we've dropped a little since COVID, but we're still in the upper 70s for men. I think it's closer to 80 for women,
that. Hmm.
and it's just going to continue to increase if the current administration doesn't fuck that up. So it really makes me very concerned about what sort of life you guys are going to be living, because here I am, I'm 61. You guys are 30 and 27. You guys are going to have a long life.
Yeah.
I could see you guys living easily, if you take care of yourselves, easily into your 80s. I'm going to be
Mhm.
long gone. You guys deserve to live in a stable, secure, prosperous United States, with great health care, affordable health care, hopefully, because of
Mhm.
health care. I was reading an article recently, and I know we've got to shut this down because we're running over. Reading an article about, and I don't know, I sent it to both of you guys,
Yeah.
about Spain, the cost of living in Spain
Yes, I
compared to
did
the
get
United States. Fascinating how much we pay here in the United States, in for instance, healthcare, private healthcare. I pay over $500 a month for medical, dental, and vision.
that. Yeah.
So what does that come to? Probably a little over 6,000 a year, probably close to
Yeah.
7,000 a year. And over there, you can pay in private healthcare, not public healthcare. You don't pay for public healthcare, but in private healthcare, you could pay anywhere from like $70 a month up to 200, depending on what you get. But think of that. That's
And
so
it's
much less.
probably equivalent, and it's equivalent care because I currently pay 150 a month for my health care, but my health
Right.
care is if my leg gets chopped off, I'll only have to
Uh-huh.
pay 30,000 for that instead of the full 200,000. My
Okay.
health care is it won't financially ruin me. It'll just make my
Yeah.
year miserable health care.
Yeah.
It's still 150 a month.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
there are healthcare is one of the things I hope this country can work on first as one of its major problems to fix. Because if the people are living healthy, if they can
right.
live with the peace of mind of
Right.
knowing, tangent, I swear I'm not going to go too long, but when I was
Uh-huh.
unemployed after graduating for a while, I ended up being on Medicaid. I had very little income and I qualified for it. After graduating, I had no health insurance. I had no money. I was
Right.
thinking, oh God, what if someone hits me in a car? Because that happened a few years ago. What if
Sure.
I trip and fall? Who knows? I'm screwed. The
Right.
moment I was confirmed for Medicaid, I looked at that little flimsy card I got and just thought,
Yeah.
if I have to go to the doctor, I don't have to pay more than $25 now. I
Right.
can do that. The
Yeah.
stress melted away. And if you
Right.
don't have stress of that kind building on you, you can focus. You can work on
Yeah.
so many other things. You can do better at your job. You
Yeah.
can, or if you don't have one yet, you can work to find one a lot more effectively.
Absolutely.
Everything else is bettered if you don't have to worry about your actual safety.
Listen, man, yeah, I totally agree with you. That is a big part of the reason why I take very good care of myself.
Yeah.
I get my physical annual physical every year. Every 5 years, I get a calcium. It's a calcium scan. I forget the exact term, but it measures how much calcium is in your bloodstream, I believe. So
Hmm.
that and that determines how much plaque you have.
Mm.
And so I want to make sure that I'm healthy because I want to be around a long time so that I can, babysit your kids, you know. But a couple other things, though, really quick, and then we're going to shut it down. I want everybody watching, all 10 of you who are watching this podcast,
Who we're very grateful for, even if you're just
very
one.
much.
And we're
Yeah,
glad someone cares to listen to us.
totally. Without governments, we don't have markets. All right. Government, because of our bureaucracy, and because of civil servants, we're able to have the kind of markets we have. Without government, we would have no markets. Okay. And economic growth. What kind of economic growth would we have if we didn't have public private partnerships? And we were talking about this earlier, things like Amtrak. Um, oh my gosh, what are some of the other examples that I came up with?
PBS, I mean, to me, just the Public
PBS.
Broadcasting Corporation in general.
Yeah. Yeah. What'd you say, Simone? Okay. Okay. But you know, if we go after cutting, government, Clinton, Bill Clinton, during his administration, they actually went at cutting bureaucracy, but they went at it with a scalpel. They were
Mhm.
very, very conscientious and careful about how what they cut and how they went about doing it. But I,
Because I
I
think
mean,
that's something we can all agree on across any party line. The federal government, as it exists, cannot continue. We need to change it. We need to reform it.
sure,
It's just we have to remember how much has been built up over the years by all
right.
these civil servants and how
That's
hard
right.
it would be to rebuild that if we just tore it down without thinking.
Yeah, yeah. There's gonna be a lot of pain, and it's not going to hurt the billionaires. It's not going to hurt Donald Trump. He's never been poor. He
Yeah.
grew up in a multi-millionaire family, and he's supposedly a billionaire now. He probably is, but these people don't understand. They don't understand what it means to be poor and to struggle, like so many lower and middle income folks do nowadays. And I keep thinking of the French Revolution, you
Mhm.
know, and
Eventually, people will get so fed up that they're not going to care about decorum or strategy or anything else. They're just going to. Luigi Mangione won't be the only instance if we
I
don't
think you're right.
steer the
I
course
think
away.
you're right. I mean, I'm afraid that could be the truth. Anyway, okay, so that's all I've got. We went over. We're at a hour and a quarter. That's not too bad, But
By keeping ourselves to 60 minutes, when we go to 75 minutes, we're still kind of controlling ourselves.
yeah, but look, thank you both. It was great to see both of you, and
Yeah.
as it always is, great to have this conversation. And thanks all of you out there who listen and who watch on YouTube. We always appreciate your attention, and we hope you join us again. Thanks a lot. All right.
Adios.